Hello there everyone, and welcome to another edition of Starry Skies, the magazine programme that tells you about what you can see in the night sky this month. I'm Mark Hardaker.
And I'm Steve Tonkin.
And we're back again looking at the stars and planets and other delights for this month of October.
And there are some delights coming up.
There are indeed. We had a pretty good September actually, Steve, didn't we not?
Yeah, I've got a lot of observing done, got fair bit of imaging done with my new toy, which is one of those tiny little smart scopes, one called a dwarf, which is very accurately named.
Yeah, this is a revolution in telescopes, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and it makes astrophotography, astroimaging available just to anybody.
Yeah.
It's still a little bit expensive, perhaps, but it's new tech. The thing is, things like the one I've got are going to be going on sale second-hand because they've just upgraded them, and so they're going to be available very, very cheaply.
Yeah. And I've got one as well. Mine's called a Sea Star, and really you just put them outside, you connect it to your phone, press the button, and you get lovely images. It really is very simple stuff.
It is. And the nice thing about the dwarf is it also has daylight photography, or daylight tracking, so you can say you see a bird, you get onto the bird and draw a little square around it, and as the bird flies off, it'll actually track it.
Woohoo!
So AI thing. It's a very modern tech. It's ever so clever.
Oh, we got deeply into that already.
Yeah,
didn't we?
right. Yeah.
Shall we focus on what we hate to do?
Yeah, shall we
today?
do some astronomy?
Well, why not? I know. Why not? So, October actually has a real potential treat in store for us, doesn't it?
Yes.
We've got a new comet potentially coming. Now, again, we have to be so careful when we talk about comets because they do whatever they want, but we should have one in the western sky later. More about that later. Mm-hmm. Full moon?
17th.
So
3 days after it acts as a very good guide to a planet we're going to talk about.
Right. So the best time to be looking really is before full moon, so the early part of the month of October, or towards the end when the moon is approaching new. So around full moon is not a great time for observing the stars. They just get washed out, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so as the year draws towards its close as well, most of the planets are back in the evening sky again. So we have a fine display throughout the night, and we'll get to that later. Mm-hmm. And finally, we have our constellation of the month, don't we?
We do, and it's one of my favourites. And actually, I was bookending an astronomy and poetry workshop at the weekend.
Whoa.
I was doing the morning stint and the evening stint, and our constellation of the month was high in the sky, and rising in the sky, and I thought, this one we've got to do.
Pegasus is the one, the flying horse. We'll come to that later on.
Yeah.
So where should we start today? Shall we just stand outside on a nice, cold, crispy evening and see what we can see?
Yeah, and the first place to look, of course, is the north, because if there is any moon, you're going to be looking away from it if you do that.
So let's suppose it's, 10:30 in the evening, middle of October. Doesn't really matter the beginning or the end, but say 10:30, beginning of October. It's getting dark by about 8:30 p.m, so that's a sure sign that winter is on its way, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we start by, let's look to the north. So put your back to the south, of course, look north, and there, down low, close to the horizon, you can see the constellation that virtually everybody knows, and that's the Plough. But it's like a signpost, isn't it?
It is. It's great. It's also, it comes up in various mythologies. And in one North American mythology, it's actually a wounded bear hunted by us lot that was chucked into the sky to save it from us by the great god Manitou. And in the autumn, as it is now, when it's low on the horizon, its blood drips on the leaves of the trees and turns them red, which is why the leaves go red in autumn, according to that myth.
You have such fantastic tales to tell us, Steve. That's why Starry Steve listeners, he's got the banter here.
But it's the stories that help you relate these things to each other and remember what's going on. That's why I love them so much.
Yeah, and that's why we love astronomy, because there's so much myth and mythology connected with these patterns in the sky.
Culture, it really is.
So let's do the usual thing. Let's follow the first two stars of the Plough upwards, and there, about halfway up the sky, you can see Polaris, which is the pole star. And when you're looking at Polaris, that's due north, bang due north, and it never changes. It's always in that position in the sky. So if you ever get stuck, you want to get home from some dark forest, maybe have a look up. You can always find the Plough, and you'll always find Polaris. And then, how about if you take the top two stars of the bowl of the plough. So you're looking straight at the plough, and then follow the top two stars of the bowl to your right, which is towards the east. And there you'll find a brilliant yellow star, Capella, rising in the east. It's quite high in the sky, about 10:30 in October, and quite yellowy, right?
It is. It's very yellowish. If you get it when it's low down, it does what a lot of bright stars will do, a lot of very bright stars. It scintillates, and so it seems to flash different colours as the light is dispersed by atmospheric turbulence.
And as it climbs higher in the winter sky, so it becomes more and more steady, and it stays this lovely yellowy colour, similar colour to the sun, really.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, unmistakably just below Capella in October. So Capella's rising in the east, and just below it, unmistakably, is the planet Jupiter, which is the brightest planet in the evening sky right now.
It is, and it's gorgeous. If you look at it with binoculars, you can usually pick out at least two, possibly more of its moons, the ones that Galileo saw. A small telescope, and you'll get all four. And if you're lucky, and the atmosphere is nice and steady, you'll be able to see markings on the planet as well.
Yeah, we'll come to all the planets in a little while. So, okay, we've been looking sort of east. So now let's turn the other way. Let's look towards where the sun just went. So we're now looking towards the west. And you'll find that beautiful blue-white star Vega in the constellation of Lyra. And if you remember, that's one of the stars in the summer triangle. It's been with us all through the summer, but its time is up.
It is, as with its companions, Deneb and Altair. They're going to gradually disappear into the western sky as they get closer to the sun, or, to be more precise, as the sun moves closer to being in front of it. Or to be even more precise, as we move round the sun, and so the line of sight... never mind.
We know what you mean. So these three stars, they're very prominent. You can't miss them. The summer triangle, because they're more prominent in summertime. So they're dipping now towards the west. But you can still probably see them until around November, December, I think.
Yeah, if you're out early enough as it gets dark, yes, you can.
Yeah. So now let's turn to the south. So back towards the plough. And if you look to the south, honestly, it's pretty barren down there, isn't it?
It is.
Those summer constellations have gone. The lovely Scorpius and Sagittarius have gone. The Milky Way's gone. And what we got two faint little zodiacal constellations down there, haven't we?
Oh, Capricornus and Aquarius. And they're both... they're actually quite difficult to recognise from this latitude because they're low down, but I can show you where to find them.
Yeah. So basically, as we're looking south, there's not much to see. All you can really see is one solitary star. Looks like one star. That's the planet Saturn. We'll come to that later. But right above it, high in the south, we can now find the Great Square of Pegasus, our constellation of the month, Steve.
Oh, yeah. It's four stars in a square, sort of round about when it's due south, the square is almost sort of like vertical and horizontal sides. If you get it earlier, it'll be sort of like on a corner, as it were.
Yeah.
But it's a good signpost to other things as well.
It is.
As we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah. So due south around 11 p.m. in mid-October, but it's south all the way through the month, really. And we've put our charts on the Forest FM website, the Fordingbridge Astronomers website, and the Wessex Astronomical Society website. So you can see the chart of the constellation of Pegasus. And this is actually one of the original 48 constellations that was listed by the 20th century astronomer Ptolemy.
It was. And he didn't have constellation boundaries like we do now.
Yeah.
Those were put in a lot later by the International Astronomical Union. And it has thrown up a few little anomalies, one of which we shall see.
Well, the funny thing is, right until 1930, there were no real boundaries in the sky. So we pointed up and said, that's the Plough, that's Orion. But there was no, is that star in Orion or is that star not in Orion? There were no real boundaries until 1930, right?
Yes.
And along comes the International Astronomical Union and say, right, this is the line, this is Pegasus, and this is Andromeda. And guess what? One of the stars in the square of Pegasus is now no longer in Pegasus.
No, it's in the constellation of Andromeda. It's the brightest star in the constellation of Andromeda.
Yeah.
So it's the top top left-hand corner of the square of Pegasus.
So you look on our map, if you see, just have a look online on our map, and you'll see that the top left square is actually not in Pegasus. But while you're there, while you're having a look at Pegasus, looking at the map, can you see that little yellow dot to the right of the constellation? It's M15, Messier 15. What's that?
Well, that is a globular cluster, which is a cluster of a few 100,000 stars, possibly. And the clue is in the name. It's globular. It appears spherical, denser in the middle, and spreading out on the outside. And these things live in a halo round our galaxy, the Milky Way, and seem to live in halo round most spiral galaxies, possibly all.
Yeah. And to me personally, I think they're one of the most beautiful objects in the sky. I think they're most like, imagine picking up a handful of snow that's just fallen, so the flakes are still individual. You pick up a ball of snow, and it's still fluffy on the outside and crushed in the middle. And imagine if they were now not snowflakes, but tiny little diamonds. And that's what it looks like with a nice I know I'm poetical this morning. So getting a bit carried away, but I do love to look at them through a nice telescope. They glitter and glow.
Yes, they are beautiful.
Yeah.
If you do want to do anything like that, so look at when there are public observing evenings on around the place. We'll do some with Fordingbridge, Wessex do some down at Durlston, and on Cranbourne Chase we do them, and come along and show you these sort of things through decent telescopes, and you'll be able to see this, very, very easily.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I mean, there are clusters and nebula in the sky that are very nice, but to me, globular clusters really one of the best sites for a telescope.
I'm a great fan of the open clusters, which is the other kind of cluster, mainly because they're easier to see in small telescopes and binoculars.
That's true.
A lot of them are.
Yeah.
There's also some that you really need telescope for, but yeah.
So this one, M15, Messier 15, it was actually not discovered by our hero Charles Messier, but by another Frenchman, a guy called Jean-Dominique Malady, in 1746. But with the binoculars, with a regular pair of binoculars, it looks just like a misty patch, Steve.
It does. It looks like an out-of-focus star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only when you get a bit of magnification, decent telescope, 6-inch telescope or equivalent, that you build to start see the stars.
You want to magnify sort of ideally at least 50 times.
Yeah.
Better if you can get up to sort of 70, 100.
Yeah. So that's a nice little object in Pegasus. Have a look for it. Look south, mid-evening, mid-month, and you really can't miss the square of Pegasus dangling in the sky. So. We can also see, if you look to the northeast, you can also see the constellation of Perseus, where the Perseid meteors came from during August, and also Andromeda, the daughter of Queen Cassiopeia and King Cepheus. These are constellations that are rising and will be in view better during the winter time. So we'll come to those later. And all these constellations, all the things that we're talking about, you can see on our monthly sky chart, which is on the Forest FM website, as well as I said before, Fordingbridge and Wessex Astronomical Societies. So, before we talk about the planets in October, Steve, shall we talk a little bit more about our cosmic visitor?
Ah, yes. It's got a complicated name for those of us of Western extraction, which is C 2023 A3 Tsuchinshan-Atlas.
You got that?
We're just going to call it 2023 A3 because that's a bit of a mouthful for us.
Yeah.
And 2023 tells you when the year it was discovered, and A3 gives an indication of when in the year. So A is January.
That's right. And the Tsuchinshan means Purple Mountain in Chinese because it was discovered at the Purple Mountain Observatory in China. And the Atlas was co-discovered by a system of telescopes, I think, in can't remember, South America? I'm not sure where. Anyway, we're just going to call it 2023 A3, aren't we?
We are.
So that comet is, as we record this at the end of September and into October, is whirling around the sun and is going to emerge on the other side of the sun around mid-month. We think around the 12th of October, we should be able to see it low in the western sky, and it may be spectacular.
And it may not be. We just have no idea.
We have no idea, because comets are notoriously unpredictable, and I'm sure you'll read in the press, on websites, that this marvellous comet's coming. It's
blazing its way across the sky.
Absolutely. and you know what? The press do more to damage our hobby than they do to promote it, because even if it's a really spectacular comet, it will not blaze across the sky. It will not shoot across the sky like a shooting star. It will be in the same position or similar position for many days in the west. So whatever you say or whatever you read online or in the press, just imagine half of that being the truth, which is where. So, yeah, the comets stubbornly refuse to perform generally and sometimes just fade away. Patrick Moore, remember what Patrick Moore used to say? He used to say that comets are like cats.
They have tails and they do whatever they want.
So we'll see. We'll review in the next Starry Skies. We'll review what we saw, but it's expected to be good. Sometimes these comets really do astound us with their brilliance, hanging as they do like swords in the sky. I'm sure many of you listeners will remember Hale Bob, was it in 1997?
Oh, something like that, yes. It was just gorgeous. I remember taking a small telescope and big binoculars out onto the street and just showing passers-by what they could see in a telescope as well. But it was naked eye, you didn't need a telescope.
It was a very bright comet, and it was around for ages. This one will only be around for about 10 days, maybe, from the 12th of October till 22nd, 23rd, probably. As it moves away from the sun, it will fade. But we've also added a finder chart for this comet to the websites as well, so you'll be able to see it. Binoculars definitely help.
Yep.
And wait until after sunset, of course, and wait till it's starting to get dark. Look west where the sun had just gone, and you should see this comet with its bright tail low in the sky. Do not call me or Steve if you can't, because it's not our fault.
No.
Right? Not our fault.
It's Comet's fault.
So it might be a complete flop, but I'm sure it will be covered on the press, and we'll try and put something on Forest FM as a reminder during the week. Okay, so how about we talk about the planets now?
Well, we mentioned Saturn.
Yeah, we did.
Easiest way to find Saturn this month, you go back to Pegasus, and you take the right-hand two stars of Pegasus and take a line down from them. And just about a bit more from the distance between those two stars below the bottom one is the brightest star in that part of the sky. It's not a star. That is the planet Saturn. And below it, a similar distance below it, lower in the horizon, you might be lucky enough to see another star, which is Fomalhaut.
Yep.
But they're all four are in a pretty much straight line mid-month. So you'll be, easy to find.
Easy to find Saturn for sure. And it was at opposition on the 8th of September. That means it was opposite the sun in the sky. So that's the best time to see it. But it's due south for the whole of the month of October. You can't miss it, as Steve said, because there's no other bright stars in that part of the sky. But if you have a telescope, maybe up in your loft, you've not got it out for ages, go and get it out now.
Yeah. And if you don't know how to use it, get in touch with us via our clubs, and we will show you how to use your scope.
Yep.
If we can.
That's what we do. The Fordingbridge Astronomers, Wessex and Cranbourne Chase, we're all in the business of promoting this hobby and showing you. Don't leave it in the loft, covered up, gathering dust. It wants to have a look at Saturn, and there's no better time. Find a nice place in the forest, maybe, or at Knowlton Church, where our observatory is. Very dark. Wait till the moon's gone, of course, or beginning and end of the month. And there, train your telescope onto Saturn. Just find it, move your telescope gently till you can see it through the eyepiece, and there it is. And there's no question, the moment you look through a telescope...
I had 7 people out with me. They were poets on Saturday night. They'd been at a poetry workshop. There was poetry and stars. And every single one of them, when they saw Saturn through the telescope, they all made exactly the same sound. That sound is wow.
That's it. Saturn does that to you.
It does, and it's not even at its best at the moment because the ring plane is sort of almost edge on, so it's not that spectacular, but it still is spectacular.
It is, and you can see, as Steve's just saying, you see the globe of the planet and the fine line of the rings to the left and right. It's not those big wide open rings that we see in the images of Saturn. They're really fine at the moment. That also means that the planet's not so bright, but you can also see the satellites easier.
Yeah.
So certainly with your telescope, you will see the biggest moon of Saturn, which is Titan. So get it out. Get upstairs now. Get it out the loft and get it ready for a nice observing session on Saturn. It's the best time to do it. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, you look to the east and you can't miss brilliant Jupiter, which is right now in the rising constellation of Taurus the Bull. Lovely yellow colour, Steve. Really reflecting the sun.
It's easy, it's bright, and again, it's a very good telescopic sight. But I think just do be aware that because these planets are relatively low down, you will notice something on them both, and which is that the edge nearest the horizon looks slightly redder, and the edge away from the horizon looks something bluer. This is nothing wrong with your telescope. Yeah. This is actually the atmosphere acting like a sort of prism and dispersing the light.
Yeah, and it's more prominent the brighter the planet.
Yeah.
So obviously with Jupiter being the brightest planet, you can see this red-blue effect more pronounced, and it's also much worse when you're looking at Jupiter low down. So leave it a little later, maybe 11, 12 o'clock at night, but swing your telescope from Saturn, point it east. You can't miss Jupiter. It's absolutely brilliant there. Yeah. And you'll see the disk of the planet straight away in any telescope. Even a pair of binoculars, you can see that it's not a star. And there, most likely you'll see 4 or possibly 3 of the bright Galilean moons that orbit around. And on a nice fine night, as you just said, Steve, you see the bands as well.
Yeah, oh yes. Again, can be difficult when it's low down because the atmosphere can be very jumpy. As it gets colder, you get a lot of thermal effects in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But it's a lovely sight, and it's another one that you've seen it once, you'll never forget it.
Absolutely. And so moving on to the next planet. So around 11 p.m. Mid-month. Start at Jupiter and look below and to its left, and there you'll see rising, and not particularly prominent to be fair, is the planet Mars.
Its most prominent thing about it is its colour. It's distinctly reddish.
Yeah. You really can't miss that. When you look at it, it's not orangey, it's red, and it's in the winter constellation of Gemini, the twins, which probably is rising around 11:30 at this time of the year. But Mars, although it's faint now, is going to get very much brighter very soon. It's moving closer to us every day, and by January of next year, it will be almost as bright as Jupiter. It's getting nearer and nearer, but for now we just have to be content as seeing one of our nearest neighbours in space coming back into the evening sky. So we love to see Mars.
While we're on the subject of red things, there's another beautifully red thing in the sky at the moment, and if you go back to Pegasus and take the bottom left star, which will be slightly bluish, you're going to need binoculars for this, and halfway between it and Saturn there is one of the reddest stars in the sky. It's called TX Piscium. Don't feel you have to remember that. It's just Piscium just means it's the constellation of Pisces. TX means it's a variable star, and it is incredibly red. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can't miss it. If anybody thought all stars are the same colour, this one will disabuse you of that fact.
It is really a red, like a garnet. This is not the garnet sky, but it's like a garnet in the sky. Beautiful.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.
So Anyway, the other planets, we haven't seen Mercury and we haven't seen Venus for several months. We've been hiding behind the sun, and they're still not easily visible, are
Yeah,
they?
because we're all going around the sun the same way. So, as we go round, they're sort of as in following us, but the other side of the sun.
Yeah, so we're not going to see Mercury. We're not going to see Venus this month. You can see Uranus and Neptune if you know where to look with binoculars, but really you need binoculars to see them. So that's our roundup of the planets, and in fact that's a roundup of astronomy for this month of October. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and if you're interested in finding out more about astronomy, or to use those telescopes and binoculars in your loft, then contact us. That's what we're here for. Your local astronomy clubs are Fordingbridge Astronomers. We meet every third Wednesday in the month at the Elm Tree in Hightown, Ringwood, and new members are more than welcome. We'll welcome you through the door.
And then there's the Wessex Astronomical Society, which is the oldest society in the region. It meets at the Allendale Centre in Wimborne on the first Tuesday of the month.
And also very welcoming to newcomers. And the last one, the newest of them all, is Cranbourne Chase Astronomy Club. They meet on the second Wednesday of the month at the Grosvenor Hotel in the centre of Shaftesbury. So slightly out of the Forest FM coverage area. But if you live that way, then maybe Cranbourne Chase is the place for you to meet. Yeah. All three clubs welcome new members, and you don't need expensive kit in this hobby, do you?
No, you don't. You as long as you've got one working eye, that's enough to get started. And as long as you've got an interest in astronomy. I mean, most astronomy has been done with the unaided eye.
Yeah.
It was only really in the 17th century that telescopes started getting used. And the amount of knowledge that the ancient civilizations got just with that Mark I eyeball is phenomenal.
Absolutely. So thanks for listening today. We'll see you next month, and we hope that you see the comet. If you do, give us a call at the studio in Forest FM, and we'll put you on air. It's goodbye from me, Mark Hardaker.
And from me, Steve Tonkin.
And we'll see you next month. Clear skies, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.